Our little talk today is about the balance sheet. The first thing you notice on the balance sheet is the official name, the statement of financial position. You old folks may still refer to it as the balance sheet. The date is as of the last day of your month or the year. It is a point in time concept. This only makes sense if you think about it. If I ask you how much do you have in the bank, you could only answer that question if you say what date you're talking about. Do you mean today? So I can easily say on December 31st of 2021, I had $1,702,642 in the bank. That makes sense if the date were a point in time. Saying, for instance, for 2021, a year, for 2021, I had $1,702,642 in the bank. Would not make any sense. The statement of financial position is as if on that day you would go and look at the bank balances at the bank and come up with that amount. We are going to spend some time in another video talking about different funds, but you can see that the balance sheet is broken into operating assets and planned fund assets. Here in the planned fund is the land, building, and equipment, and over here in non-current assets in the planned fund is $1,245,890 that is cash and investments that belong to the planned fund. So that would be money collected to build a new conference office, or money that has been set aside for replacing assets that you currently have. But these are allocated or restricted donations made toward a new building or something to do with your land, building, or equipment. One beauty of putting them over here is that they are not in the operating fund, confusing our board about what is available. The assets of the organization are the things that the organization owns. There are a couple points here that we can look at. First, notice that they are things that the company owns. A good president stands up in front of the pastors at the pastors' meeting and says, "Our pastors are the union's biggest asset." This is an innocent statement, and of course it is true. But they are really not assets of the union since slavery has ended. In order to be on the statement of financial position, they have to be owned or controlled or held by the organization. There's another topic. Every one of these asset numbers need a little bit of specialized knowledge to know what they mean. We're going to start going through some of them and looking at what they mean in general terms. For example, one of the things that you think you know right away is cash. But cash includes many things that you might not be thinking about. It does include cash in hand, currency in hand, but it also includes bank accounts and even some short-term investments. These are very short-term investments like money market accounts or certificates of deposits, which we are going to count as cash. We can get our hands on this money very rapidly. So the things included here, like certificates of deposit, may surprise you. However, there are some things that are excluded from not being in cash, and that may also be surprising. First off, if the purpose of the cash is to build a new building, let's say someone gave us a $100,000 donation. When we put that money in the bank, that donation was for building a new building. That cash would not be up here in cash like you think it would. Even though it is cash, you can go to the bank and see it. It's not shown up there because it is planned fund cash. It is shown down here. You can even see the label acknowledges that. Here is non-operating cash and investments. So if you have $100,000 in a cash account that came from a restricted donation or even from a board set aside, you put it in different bank accounts, then it would no longer be counted as cash, and it goes here in non-current investments in the plan fund. In the same way with investments. Here are operating investments that can be spent for your operations. If these were investments were connected to building, then they would go down here in the non-current plan fund. Later we'll talk about the difference between current and non-current assets. But for investments to be up here, they need to be current. But non-current investments would be down here in the non-current section. Let's look at accounts receivable. You might say that this is what people owe you, and that is correct, but slightly off. We have students in our school, and this is what they owe us. This could be employee receivable, showing what employees owe you. This is short-term and is not an employee notes receivable, so don't confuse it with employee notes receivable. They have a separate line for where we have made them sign a note. Just going back to student accounts receivable, let's assume for a minute these were student accounts receivable. Notice that they are labeled here as net. Let me explain quickly what this means. Just imagine a long list of all the people that owe us money, and imagine they're totaled. So we have Fred owes us 1,000, John owes us 10,000, and so forth. And then at the bottom there's a total. Then, before we get to the number on the financial statement, we subtract an estimate of bad debts. So instead of accounts receivable being what people owe us, it is what we think we're going to get from the people who owe us money. Slightly different. We know that some people will not pay us, and so this net allowance is to remove that estimate for bad debts. Cash held for agencies is a little bit complicated. Imagine we're a conference and we've collected tithe money. Some of that belongs to the organization above us, or maybe we are a union and are holding tithes and offerings that belong to the division. Or we're a division and we're holding money that belongs to maybe to a union, or maybe it's money that belongs to the general conference. We do not show that money that we're holding for others in cash and cash equivalents. Instead, we put it here in cash held as for agencies. It is segmented out, and later on when we cover liabilities, we'll cover what agency means exactly to help us know what goes in there. The value of doing this is to leave your cash and cash equivalents up here at the top as being your own organization's money. That you can use this when you're thinking about spending on new activities or money you have for an emergency, without getting confused with the money that you owe to other organizations. Before the church started segmenting things out this way, the cash showed a big amount, then it often hid how cash poor the organization really was. The loan receivables is the current portion of the loans that people owe you, like car loans from employees and educational loans. Then we have supplies and prepaid expenses and inventory. These are all recorded at what we think we're going to get out of them. You can go to the bank and get that amount of cash. You can sell the investments and get about that amount of money. Accounts receivable is what we think we're going to collect from the people who owe us money. And so these amounts are close to what cash we think we're going to get if we had a little bit of time. Down here in non-current section, things are a little bit different. Land, building, and equipment is not shown what we think we can get out of them. We can say that we have 4,975,856 of land, building, and equipment assets, but they may not be worth that at all, or they may be worth a lot more than that. Our land, building, and equipment is shown at what accountants refer to as depreciated historical cost. Historical cost is what we paid for them and that has been depreciated. So if we paid £1,000 for a projector that we think is going to last 5 years, 1 year's gone by, then its depreciated historical cost would be $800. That was the $1,000 that we paid for it minus the $200 depreciation that we'd already used up. That leaves a value of $800. The $800 has nothing to do with what it's worth. It could be worth a lot more than that or much less. However, since we're using it in our operations and not really planning on selling it, what it is worth is less important than, say, the cash or the investment account. Our next video is the difference between current and non-current assets. It is a very important concept. We need to understand what a current asset is and what a non-current asset is, and it is not obvious. Hardly anyone has got this straight, and we need to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what they are. So thank you and keep watching.